For all of you who have been following my channel the last few months, you'll remember Rich's black Strat where the pivot post had broken through to the electronics cavity. I posted that video play by play, exactly how I repaired that. Went to this larger fastener, put in a 1-inch diameter maple dowel, and there were a pile of people that sort of screamed, "Why didn't you put those press-fitted fluted metal inserts and a machine thread for the pivot posts instead of this?" Well, guess what, folks? Have a look at this. This is also an American Strat. And this does have those press-fit inserts with the machine-threaded posts that everybody was screaming at me to use. Well, as you can see, both of these ones broke through. So we're not going that route. We're going to get these out. We're going to do exactly the same repair we did on Rich's, and we can kiss this issue goodbye forever. So I'm less concerned with the centers. We can find those after the fact once those maple dowels are installed. But my concern is just to get all of the fractured wood out of there and stay back far enough from this cavity that we don't break through that side as well. So we're favoring the front edge, and like I said, that'll get rid of all of that fractured stuff. Because we're skimming this down, it's rock maple end grain. I put a brand new disc on here, just skimming it down to the line. I did point this out in the last video, but I'm going to point it out again. The grain orientation is actually on a little bit of an angle this way. And that's what I wanted. We're going to butter that up with 48-hour cure aviation epoxy. Something that I do not use very often, epoxy, for anything. But this is one of those cases where it warrants it. Happy with that, nice and flush. Got that cavity wall nice and flush. 1019.5 is the depth of the cavity we want to fill. So I'm just going to roll this again on this fresh 80 grit. I have that air activated foot switch that I use, momentary switch. 1019, 1021. Okay, I'm just gonna freeze that. Can't believe it. 1020. Okay, I'm not pushing my luck. You're just marking that cavity line. We'll skim back that outside radius like we did a second ago. Okay, let's check this one. So the trick with this stuff is you got tons of open time. That's not an issue. But the idea is you don't want to put more on than you need. You definitely don't want to have to clean any of this stuff up after the fact. So I'm just kind of buttering up that wall. And I am actually buttering the floor of that cavity as well. And that's looking good. So tons of open time on this, so there's no reason why you can't get it right. So we have let this cure for a couple of days, and now we've got tons of maple to support those pivot posts. It's interesting that last week was the 65th anniversary of the day that Leo submitted his patent drawings to the USPTO for the original vibrato bridge. So that original design 65 years ago, as everybody knows, had 6 screws across the leading edge of that plate. In my 50 years of doing this work, I have yet to see that bridge fail like these new modern ones have. So long before we go over to the drill press and start drilling holes, all of this needs to be understood. So this is the larger fastener we're going to be using, so we'll be drilling out those maple dowels for this longer and thicker fastener. First thing you have to consider is that this unthreaded portion, that needs to be able to move up and down like a piston after the bridge is installed. So we'll start at the top of the fastener and work our way down. So the height of the unthreaded portion of the cuff is 0.427. The diameter is 0.276. So the initial hole that's drilled needs to be deep enough and a big enough diameter to allow this portion of the fastener to move up and down like a piston. Next thing we're looking at is the height of this threaded portion. So we have to make sure that we get the whole diameter right. Now the outside diameter of the threads is 236 thou. But obviously you can't drill the hole that size because you need the threads to bite into the wall of the hole. The body of the fastener in between the threads is 162 thou. We need to drill a hole that's slightly larger than 162 thou that allows these threads to bite into the wall of that hole to give us our adjustment. So the hole needs to be big enough to allow the fastener to go into it, obviously, but not so big that the threads don't get enough purchase on the inside diameter of that hole. That black Strat that you saw the video on that I did for Rich a few months ago, I just scraped some paraffin wax onto those threads and it moves up and down smooth as silk. Easily as smooth or smoother than the machine fasteners that broke through that cavity wall. So the first 2 holes we're going to drill, we're going to allow for the diameter of this, which is 0.276. I have a drill bit that's 0.2775, just slightly larger. We're going to drill those 2 holes first. So for my stress test, I drilled a hole 189 thou, very close to the end of that maple dowel to see if it would split. That moves up and down freely enough. I'm going to cut that open and we'll have a look at how much of a bite we get into the wall of the maple with that size diameter bit. You definitely want to do a test piece before you go to the guitar. And that's how deep of an impression those threads made into that rock maple. I'm happy with that. So 2 things. We got enough of a bite for that fastener to move up and down, but more importantly, it's not too much of a bite that you split the dowel. Now we're ready to drill the guitar. The outside diameter of the threads is 236. The hole we're drilling is 189. So we've made that hole 47 thou less than the OD of the threads, and that's given us the bite we need. It's tight enough that it actually took some of the plating off at the leading edge here. So that's a good indication. Happy with that. So now we have to take into account the height of the threaded portion plus the height of that cuff. Yeah, if we get a total depth of about 1.377. I'll go with that. Well, the bonus about using a brad point bit for that first hole is it allows you to kind of index. There we go. Index this bit so that we get this dead center. There we go. So this is the only hint of that bridge post repair, and that's why I, basically just stained the top of the maple dowel orange. So really, at a glance, looking at this guitar, nobody would ever know any repair was ever done. So the first thing we got to do is we've got to take this down to 125 thou. Now I am going to turn on the dust collector, so we'll make it a bit of noise here. 143. 133. 127.5. 130. 126.5. 126.5. Okay, so 125. And I'm bringing you in a little closer on this, so no, I'm not making this up. 125. Other side. 125. So that's our next radius. We took that radius off the fingerboard, and we're going to shape that. And you can see that I'm just following the line. And now we'll radius the outside of the crown. It's the last move we make. Erring on the side of caution here, leaving that good and thick, so we've got lots to play with as we cut those values. Okay, so we've traced all these strings all the way across, and you can see that we've left quite a bit of forgiveness on those outside edges. As we're on the home stretch and we make our final adjustments, we'll be able to shift that ever so minutely to get it to line up perfectly dead center with the neck. We're on to the A string. Remember, tuning that 12th fret note. It's sharp. It's going to come back. Well, you know how many times I've harped at you, don't over tighten these cuffs. Well, this is why. This is stripped. Now, luckily, I have in my junk box, I have an identical machine hit, so we're going to swap that out for Andrew so he's not left out in the cold with that, because normally you'd have to buy a full set. So we'll swap that out now. Yeah, it must be right inside the machine head. Snug that brand new replacement down. Not too tight. Yeah, I think the rest are good. Yeah, they're all good. It's just that one, just that A string. So here we go. Okay, back to the guitar. Well, we're bringing you back for another look. Now I'm going to take my 17, and now that we've relieved all that extra material off of the nut, I'm going to file that again. It needs to come forward and it needs to come down. 12th fret and open. And 1st fret. Okay, that's still sharp. So we do need to bring that nut, the height of that nut slot. We couldn't do it earlier because there was just too much material that was grabbing the file. I'm making sure that I keep an angle towards the leading edge of the nut as I file. Just a couple more strokes to bring that down. And 1st fret. All right, we're there. Well, I'm happy with that. All right, back to the sander for a sec. So Andrew can finally relax and just play his guitar. So here's a good close look at these frets before we do anything. It's all masked off and ready to go. And we'll bring you back for a finish shot when we're done. So a couple of tips about masking off these maple necks. I tend to use a low tack painter's tape. The finish looked pretty tight on this one. I don't think it's going to be a problem, but if you can reduce any chance of pulling any lacquer when you go to pull that tape off, you want to take that opportunity. Now the next thing I want to point out is these frets are down pretty low. I did dress out the lion's share. There's a couple of sort of ghost marks in the first 3 frets, but for the most part we got it good and clean. It was actually pretty level along the length, along the trajectory of the string path. Because the crowns were so flat, it makes me think that this was probably done with one of those CNC machines. I have noticed that in the past many times, that these CNC machines do an excellent job of leveling, but not a great job of crowning. So the tops of the crowns tend to end up pretty flat after using a CNC machine. So I went over this by hand with the crowning file and managed to kind of chase the crowns back to center. The frets are pretty low, so there wasn't much crown to work with, but I did end up re-crowning anyway and chasing those crowns back to center. So let's get some strings on this thing. So let's start with the tuner. Now I have gone with these chords before, just like your garden variety C chord. 1st position, 3rd position, and 8th position, which would be a G, D, So another thing you've seen me use is the interval of a minor second, which is basically a semitone distance. So you've got a C and a D, and as I move down, you got a B and a C. So the smallest distance obviously between notes is 1 fret. And when you play those two notes together, a B and a C, just if you isolate them and play them like this, they sound out of tune. But when they're played in context of an arpeggio and your guitar is intonated properly, then all of a sudden it takes on a whole new meaning. So we've got this or this. There's another minor second, which is F sharp to G. So these are the Kinman pickups. Just going to flick through the switch. So I did have to chase a couple of ground wires for the output jack at the jack and then at the actual switch. In both instances, the wires on these Kinman pickups are ultra fine, very easy to short out between the braided ground and the actual hot lead. I ended up stripping them back, resoldering. It's good to go. The other thing is, because the cavity is actually shielded, the input jack cavity, if you turn that input jack one way or the other, if it grounds out against the inside of the cavity, the guitar goes dead. It's not the case now. Everything's working fine, 100%. We ended up settling on 9 to 46 strings at concert pitch, and as you can hear, it's really behaving itself now. I lubricated all of the points of contact from the new pivot posts that we put in. The springs in the back, the claw, every point of contact, because it was creaking a bit. Now it's great. You know, I have to say that I really like what Andrew has done with the bar. It's beautiful. He's obviously kind of customized. It might not be cosmetically correct for some people, but it is super comfortable to play, and I can kind of curl my hand around that if I'm sort of plucking the strings without using it, but it's right under my palm when I need it. Good job, Andrew. Love it. These, of course, are the new pivot posts. I had gold or black. I didn't have any chrome, so I went with the gold in this case, but I don't think that's going to be a game changer. So let me lay some stuff down and let you hear this thing. So I've laid down something in F sharp minor. So I'll let that play.